God's word identifies anointed Christians who are caring for Christ's interests on earth as the faithful and discreet slave. When Christ inspected the slave in 1918, he found those anointed ones on earth to be faithful in providing spiritual food at the proper time. Hence, Jesus, the Master, was pleased thereafter to appoint them over all his belongings. Separate and distinct from Babylon the Great. To be no part of the world, they had to be no part of religious systems that were deeply involved in the affairs of the world and that had absorbed doctrines and customs from ancient Babylon, the longtime enemy of true worship. When the First World War erupted, the Bible students had for decades been exposing the pagan roots of such doctrines of Christendom as the Trinity, immortality of the human soul, and hellfire. They had also laid bare the Church's record of trying to manipulate governments for their own selfish ends. Because of Christendom's doctrines and practices, the Bible students had identified it with Babylon the Great. They pointed out that it mixed truth with error, lukewarm Christianity with outright worldliness, and that the biblical designation Babylon, meaning confusion, well described that condition. The Watchtower here is telling us that in 1918, the Bible students were separate from the church which was pagan. It was mixing truth with error, therefore Babylon or confusion. The Bible students, on the other hand, in 1918 were dispensing the food at the proper time. They were therefore not pagan and not mixing truth with error. This is why Jesus chose them. Very important. So in 1918, the churches of Christendom had teachings which had pagan roots, Trinity, eternal soul, hellfire. They were manipulating governments, and in other articles, they often mention war, that is, freedom of conscience. Christians have to join governments, politics, armed forces, as the New Testament teaches. And the Bible students, therefore, had no pagan roots. Let us examine what Bible students, today's Jehovah's Witnesses, were teaching in 1918, which this article calls food at the proper time for 1918. Let's see here. The Watchtower then in 1918 had these books published. The Time is at Hand, Studies in the Scriptures, Thy Kingdom Come, The Finished Mystery, and others. We notice here they have the Egyptian false god Aton or Aten, the sign of the winged disc or the winged globe disc, on their books. This is Bible study books, studies in the scriptures. Christians, the true Christians, had pagan signs from Egyptian gods on their books. And the Watchtower magazine of the time, even up till 1931, they had coats of arms, which is associated with Knight Templars and other paganism, on the cover of a Christian magazine, or so-called Christian. They had the Cross and Crown, which is from Masonry, Freemasonry. Jehovah's Witnesses also is the Harp of God. Up to the year 1928, they believed in the cross, which is a pagan object, supposedly from Babylon the Great. Jesus was observing all these things in 1918. So as we have observed, we see in the Bible students column, no pagan roots. Really? Number one, while Jesus was inspecting them, this was food at the proper time for 1918, remember. So they had pagan signs on their books of the Egyptian god Aten, or Aten, which was associated with the pagan god Ra. At B, they had Knight Templar signs of coats of arms on their magazines, Christian magazines, and Freemasonry cross and crown signs. At D, they had pagan crosses in which they believed in. By 1914, the date that Jesus took kingdom power, supposedly, the Watchtower already had made one false prophecy of Armageddon, 1914. And during the time that Jesus was examining all the Christian religions from 1914 to 1918, the Watchtower made two more false prophecies of 1915 and World War I. And they were already in preparing by 1918 a false prophecy of Armageddon for 1925. So the Watchtower was teaching that Christianity mixed truth with error, Christendom, so they were rejected by Christ for that. Here we see the Watchtower mixing truth with error equally, or also. In 1918, the Watchtower also was teaching phrenology, which is a study of the bumps and cavities on the skull of a person to determine character. They also were teaching pyramidology, which teaches and believes that the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt was a stone witness of the Bible built by God through Melchizedek. The measurement of the interior passageways would agree with the Bible for dates like 1914 and other dates. And also it would also explain the gospel message of the birth of Christ, his death, his resurrection, etc. So as you can see, there's all these events, but wait, there's more. There's point number 6, unverifiable events such as Jesus' invisible return. B, Jesus choosing them. Any cults would say Jesus chose us. And C, his return in 1874 and 1914. All these are teachings, cultic teachings, and teachings that cannot be verified by anyone except those who claim it happened. So let's examine now for the church. The pagan roots that were named were the Trinity, eternal soul, and hellfire, which are debatable. They are not necessarily pagan because they are debatable. Some people can find verses for these teachings. You can find verses that say Jesus is God, if you have another version than the New World Translation. You can verify with verses that the soul is eternal, and you can verify with verses that there is a hellfire if you use another version than the New World Translation, such as the King James and other Bible versions. Whereas it is not verifiable in the Bible. If we check number 1 for the Bible students, the pagan signs, the false Armageddon prophecies, number 3, and number 4, phrenology, number 5, pyramidology, and these unverifiable events cannot be seen in the Bible. So therefore, this was food at the proper time for 1918, according to the Watchtower of today. According to you, examining these things, is this food at the proper time? Is this even food at all? I'll let you make the decision. Now you can verify the scans that I have put at the end of the video for these different claims. Thank you for watching this video.